Hello everyone, I'm back with a new video, and today we are going to be talking about some rather niche Thomas merchandise. Not just toys, but we're also going to be talking about some home media and books. Now, I could just say the Wooden Railway White Face Troublesome Truck or the Wooden Railway Troublesome Van, if anyone knows what those are. But nah, this video is for the deep cuts. So first, let's start with the toys. Alright, starting off, we have the Nylent Thomas toys. Now, Nylent had a variety of different toys, including battery-operated toys, push-along toys, activity toys, and pull-along toys. Now, these engines are comparable in size to Tomy, and they run on what's pretty close to S-scale track. It's slightly wider, and you'll know that I actually own these. These toys were manufactured in the 1990s, with the first battery-powered Thomas set coming out in 1990 and Percy and Toby coming out in 1992. Same with the pull-along Harold, and a 9-piece set was also released in this time with the Shining Time Station branding. We also got a Knapford Station set, a Wellsworth Station set, and an Engine Shed set. And these sets also had a variety of illustrations made by Owen Bell. For rolling stock, we had a few open wagons, one of which being brown, that was exclusive to the motorized Thomas pack, one of which being the more traditional light gray color. We also had Annie and Clarabelle, and a few closed box vans. Now the track layouts were pretty simple, mostly being these figure 8-esque track layouts that had tunnels connecting the two sections of the track, and with the paintings by Owen Bell being on stickers. Next up, we have the Untitled Troublesome Trucks, but not just the normal ones, the brown first release Troublesome Trucks. Now, these trucks were released in 1990 and were only in 1990. In 1991, these were discontinued and replaced with the more well-known gray variations that, basically everyone including me has. These brown trucks are more or less the exact same as the gray ones, just, as I said, brown. And they were only produced for a year, possibly being discontinued because of how inaccurate they were, or possibly being factory errors. Alright, now this is the time where we get into the more actually niche category of toys, because up next we have the Bandai Go-Ahead Thomas toy line, which consisted of wind-up versions of Thomas, Edward, Henry, Gordon, James, and Percy. These were completely plastic, and unlike Capsule Playrail, they didn't have couplings and were one complete mold piece, as opposed to being made out of the chassis and the body with separate faces. These primarily use stickers for the detail, and honestly, share more of a resemblance to the Nakayoshi toys and the Departing Now toys in terms of scale and proportions. They were released in 1997 with candy for around 300 Japanese yen, which I don't even know how much that is in US dollars. That translates to this much. And they all have wind-up motors. Unlike the Capsule Playrails, once again, the wheels are molded into the body, while the actual wind-up motors are housed on the inside of the chassis, similar to like Tomy Terrence. They're relatively hard to find, but if you do find them, they shouldn't go for that much, and they're worth picking up if, you find them. If you do find them, I recommend you make a video on them though, because I cannot seem to find anything on these. Alright, next up we have one of my most wanted pieces of Thomas & Friends merchandise, the Brio Wind-Up Thomas. Now for those who don't know, Brio, for a limited amount of time in the UK, held the rights to make Wooden Railway Thomas toys. It was from around 1996 to 2000, which is why, they're so rare and expensive. And the battery-operated Thomas was one of the final items produced, which is why it is so rare. It was only produced from 1999 till whenever in 2000 they lost the license, and it's basically impossible to find. Every time I found it on eBay, it's either been broken or just a ridiculous price. and it looks amazing. It's one of the best Thomas toys out there of Thomas himself. And honestly, if you find him, even if you don't collect Wooden Railway, he looks awesome, and I would recommend picking him up. He has lights where his buffers are, which is inaccurate, but I love it. His face is accurate. He has the front cab windows. His boiler stripes are painted unlike basically every other Brio Thomas item. And he has both forward and backwards motion, which more or less none of the motorized Wooden Railway Thomas items had past the 1999 Thomas Express, or whatever it was called, the 1999 motorized Thomas. Alright, next up we have the Capsule Playrail Railway Series Thomas, otherwise known as the original Thomas. Now this Thomas was a variant of the standard Capsule Playrail Thomas, based on his appearance in the Railway series, and was only available in the Various Thomas's Large Set edition from 2015. The Thomas is just a standard Capsule Playrail Thomas with an open cab door and sticker printing to look more like hand-painted details as opposed to just the cleaner overall look of the standard Capsule Playrail Thomas. And it also has a more Railway series inspired face. It doesn't look as much like the newer Tamika or the standard Railway series Thomas. That's because this is based on his second book as opposed to his first one. And yeah, it looks nice. Not nearly as niche, though, as the Talking Thomas from the Capsule Playrail range. This Thomas, otherwise known as the Sound Thomas, was exclusive to the Fun Friends edition from 2010, and is more or less just a standard Capsule Playrail Thomas that has a speaker inside that uses two LR41 button cell batteries and says a few phrases in Japanese. But he does have a few differences in that he's slightly taller due to how his chassis is made. His side rods are backwards, and he has a button on top of his cab. Alright, next up we have these giant wooden Thomas toys from Cole's Auction Toys Limited. These were some of the first toys based on the television show in 1984. They're giant wooden toys with the Railway series faces and giant plastic tires. As you can tell, they're extremely inaccurate, and that's probably due to them being made at a time where not a lot of reference photos were out of the show yet, but you can tell they did what they could with what they had, I guess. These are extremely hard to find, and only a few have surfaced on the internet in the time that they were discontinued, being around 1990. Thomas, as we can see, is rocking a bit of a darker blue, has some nice lining, and has a sticker inside of his cab, with Percy being the same, and rocking a nice darker green. They both seem to have Railway series based faces similar to their Ertl paper face counterparts, and they are nice and smooth. They have a nice wooden finish. Alright, finally we have the Playrail Golden Thomas from 1997. This Thomas was a pack available as a prize for a lottery entered at the Playrail Thomas Fair in 1997 in Japan. It includes a Golden Thomas with Annie and Clarabelle that is based on the original 1992 release, which is why Thomas still has the blue wheels and only 4 wheels, and why it has the same standard box as the 1995 to 98 Thomas. It also has the painted face on the smoke box, as opposed to the separate face that would be normalized in around 2003 when they were redesigned. And each of them came with this certificate that translates to this. With these being a prize from 1997, barely any of these have surfaced online in its time being known. It's probably rarer than that one Silver Thomas. Anyway, with that being said, that concludes all the merchandise I had lined up. So, next up, let's go to the home media releases side of things. Starting with the sample DVDs. These DVDs were given off with Wooden Railway sets and, Tomy sets, just sets in general, as well sample DVDs. They had 1 to 2 episodes of the show on it, and the episodes they had usually reflected the sets they came with in some kind of way. There were a few different types of these discs, but for the most part, they were just the ones that came with the take-along or Wooden Railway specialty sets, or the ones that were limited promotional deals that had random episodes on them. This next topic is actually pretty cool because it's actually the first VHS release, or home video release at all, of Season 1, being The Adventures of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends VHS tape, produced by Guild Home Video. And only a few of these are known to exist still. These tapes would later be reissued in 3 volumes by the Video Collection in 1986, once Guild Home Video would lose the rights. Next up, we're going to be talking about the DVDs that have the sampler CDs. These discs were produced from 2001 to 2003, some of which not even being produced for that long, and due to this, they can be pretty rare at times. While harder to find, they are more well-known. These releases were also more or less the same as their standard releases, but came in thicker DVD cases so they could hold the CD. The sampler CDs have different sing-along songs from the classic model era. These are harder to find because they were produced for a very limited amount of time, and each sampler CD actually has a different set of tracks, as seen here. Alright, and finally, since this recording is starting to get a bit longer than I want it to be, we have the books. Before we get to the books, I would actually like to show off these guys. Now, these are some of the DVDs I've collected in my time, because before I actually started collecting the merchandise again, I collected home media. So here's one of the free sampler DVDs. This one has 2 episodes on it, I think. Yep, The Runaway and Fish, with George Carlin as the narrator. This one was a sampler DVD with the purchase of a playset. And yeah, you got this nice Thomas and Duck art. Here's the spine. Yeah, I got this from like Goodwill a long time ago or something. I was with my Nana and I just found it for $2, so I grabbed it. Anyway, I also have this not so sealed Great Race promotional DVD, as you can see by the giant promo sticker. I'm pretty sure the disc is in pretty good condition, but I don't want to open this any further in fear of ruining it. But yeah, you can see the plastic wrap still on it. It's still in good condition, and I don't know what this was for, but you know, it's there. Yeah, I could probably do this a lot better if I did more research on this, but I didn't. So yeah, it's the DVD and digital version. Then I have the sealed, as in completely sealed, Races, Rescues, and Runaways DVD. So yeah, this one has a green sticker as opposed to this yellow sticker too. And you know, I'm glad this is the one that's in good condition, because I love these classic DVDs. When I was growing up, the hit era was primarily airing on TV. Like, I'd like to say season 9 to 11 was airing. But I had a lot of these classic DVDs. Like, I had the Cranky Bugs DVD. I had the DVD that had Trust Thomas and the other one on it. One of the 2-pack DVDs. And I remember watching Calling All Engines on DVD. So, you know, these hold a special place in my heart. And lastly, I actually have one of the sampler CDs. Now, believe it or not, I got this for just $1 at a thrift store. It was a long time ago, like back when I first started collecting home media again. You can see Free Inside music sampler. You can see the thicker disc case when compared to my Races, Rescues, and Runaways one. Oh yeah, and there's apparently a security device in here, so yeah. But yeah, you can see it's thicker. And this is what it looks like. I even still have the paper in here, that thing. So yeah, I got Thomas's Train Yard Tracks CD. It's in pretty good condition. There's my old Thomas book bag. You can kind of see it there. And there's my phone too in the reflection, but yeah. Anyway, That's it, and now let's actually get to the books now. Now, there were only so many that I could find that are actually quote-unquote rare. If I do a second part to this, I'll do more research on the books, but starting off, we have the first edition Railway Series books, and more specifically, the very first editions. I'm more familiar with the colorful versions that have illustrations from the books on the front, but these are the first prints and haven't been in production since, I want to say, the 1950s. And the last item on this list are the Christopher Audrey books, those being because they haven't been re-released nearly as much as Audrey's book. And that's it for rare and niche Thomas pieces of merchandise. With that being said, I would like to say thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next video.